Good afternoon. It's been a little while since we've done a Rabbi Nachman class on Patreon and on all our websites and locations, platforms, whatever they're called. They're places where Hashem has created this potential for world communication, which is really mind-blowing. Because the correction and tikkun and restoration of the world is through communication. And the breakdown of communication is self-destruction. That happens in an individual, in a couple, in a family, in a community, in a nation, in a world. So here we are pushing towards the end of Torah 75, which Rabbi Natan, the great student of Rabbi Nachman, who wrote down all these hundreds and hundreds of Torahs, maybe thousands. And he tells us in the middle that this Torah we've just been learning previously was put together by other students, and he doesn't like it. He says it's begam, it's confused, it's not direct, so he makes an attempt to rewrite the whole thing in an order that makes more sense in a continuity of spiritual development that we can understand and grasp what he's talking about, because he's talking about fixing the world here, and it's not what you would imagine at all, because the world was whole in the beginning, except one thing. Chava and Adam, the first couple, didn't know their creator for who he really was. And they were given a command, and they didn't follow it, and the world fell. And that falling took place chiefly through sparks of holiness that went throughout the creation. But those sparks are when we use the word spark, you imagine a blacksmith striking a piece of iron and sparks go everywhere, and it's a good image. But what we're talking about, those sparks here are actually sparks of godly energy embedded in letters. But not just any letters that live on, letters that are filled with desire. Sparks of desire for what? Well, for their source. And these sparks fell into all the animals and all the vegetable kingdom and then the mineral kingdom and, of course, the human kingdom. And Rabbi Nachman is going to go on and tell us that the pleasure of this world is from those sparks. Whether you eat an apple and it tastes good and you feel good, that's not just simply a combination of chemicals in your body. It's a spark of the creator in the apple. And it's the same thing when you put on a new sweater. And the same thing when you buy some other article, a tool that you use created by man, because the wisdom of man also contains sparks of the creator. And so what's happening is we're really experiencing the pleasure of God in everything, but we don't identify it. We don't know how to identify it because our lenses are frothy. Is that word? Frosted glass over the eyes. And when the eyes get cleaned and the heart is cleaned, then we start to see that it's true, that the pleasures we have in this lifetime, they're all coming back to point to the same pleasure. So when I see my grandkid laughing, I get pleasure. It's not just my grandkid laughing. That laughter is rooted in the original laughter, the laughter of Yitzhak, the laughter of Sarah Imenu, the laughter of Hashem. and God does laugh, actually. And all of it, we give it the code name sparks of letters that were broken, okay? So Rabbi Nachman picks up this idea from this, and this is the idea, the Shira to Kelim is when everything broke in the fall in the garden. Now there was a primordial breaking of the vessels in the beginning of creation, because that was to form this, so to speak, reality where God is both creating and hidden at the same time in his creation. And that's a deeper concept in Kabbalah that we've talked about before. It's called the Tzimtzum Rishon, where all the infinite light was pushed away, and then it was broken into layers and inscribed in a spiralic structure that also has broke and became lines. And so that's another whole subject that we're not going to go further on now. However, the olamot hem bechinato otiyot, the worlds of consciousness are made of these letters as well. In other words, your desire for anything is still deep. If you look inside it, it has a desire for Hashem. And they're spread out into uncountable sparks. And through this concept called the feminine waters, which is humanity's love for God and love for creation, that gathers all together, and especially in the Torah and in the prayer. Okay? So Torah and prayer are not simply what we think, that we're talking to God in prayer and we're reading the books of the Torah out loud. We're gathering sparks because that's what human beings do. And our speech is actually extracting those sparks and returning them where? Back towards where they came from. So he says this idea of the feminine waters through Torah and Tefillah, Naseh Tzeruf Minot Tzitzot Otiyot. And so we reform the broken pieces. In other words, it's like your child, he goes out, you give him a nice big cookie, and you come back in the room, and it's just a million little crumbs all over the floor because he dropped it, and then he decided to dance on it, and so now God says, okay, now you all broke the world. Now you're going to pick up every crumb, every spark through your speech in Torah and Tefillah. Now the Rebbe goes on to tell us that speech that's not in Torah and Tefillah, the everyday speech of the vanities of this world, doesn't accomplish the job, because the idea is to return the power that was given to us back to where it was given, from the speech of Torah and prayer that God first spoke in the beginning of time and space, and not the vanities of the speech of this world. And this creates peace, because when you take all these fallen pieces, imagine you put that cookie back together, your baby's going to be thrilled, right? He's going to have a new vessel to hold the light called cookie. and God gives us the same chance through our prayer and Torah learning to bring all the sparks back together into a new structure called shalom. And that shalom is not just that we get along. This is a much greater shalom. This is a transcendental shalom, where you feel the oneness all around you, inside you, outside you, in everyone else. Even in the contradictions and the fights, you still see the oneness. Because before these sparks are put back into words of prayer and Torah, right? They're not attached. They're not rebound together. They're scattered. That's why we get this. Sometimes, you get that feeling that everything's in pieces. Well, it is in a way. And this is why you get people arguing and not getting along and disagreeing about everything. Because all the sparks are trying to conquer each other. They're not working in peace together to form a new structure, because they don't have the a priori structure of the Torah and the prayer behind them that we give it by doing it. It's like if you give 1,000 pounds of silver ingots to a silversmith and put them on his desk, and he just leaves them sitting there, and then we come back a week later, where's all the jewelry I ordered? I said, oh no, this was beautiful. All the scattered pieces of silver. It's not what you ordered. He wants the sparks returned to the original structure, to the beautiful jewelry, the beautiful garments, the beautiful creations that were here before the fall. And that happens chiefly in our consciousness. Right? We said that they overcome each other. And when we put them in holy speech and we unite them together, that Aleph goes with Bet and creates Av, Father, and Aleph and Bet and Gimel and Dalet create the word Beged, a garment. Wow. In the first 4 letters of the Torah, we have 2 main concepts in life, a father and a beged, a garment. And so on and so forth. As you join prayer words together, beracha, those 4 letters spell blessing. And the kli for blessing is this peace between the parts. the parts in us with ourselves, the parts between ourselves and our families and our friends and our communities and so on. So speaking them puts them back together. As the jeweler or the silversmith takes all the little pieces of silver and welds them together into something beautiful. Shezeu b'chinat shalom, and this is the idea of peace. And we said before, and then what happens when you make that beautiful thing of your words of prayer and learning, then you elevate, your desire elevates it to God. It's like showing God, look, God, here, look what I made. You know, when the kids bring stuff home from school to show you what they made, you better smile and tell them it's great, because it is. Because they're engaging in the process of the restoration of creation in their own creative way. And as adults and as spiritually minded people, we're being instructed here by the tzaddik of many generations how to do it in our prayer and Torah learning. And that's the elevation of the feminine waters. Again, we create that peace. And then we fix the worlds and we renew them from their fall. And it's as if we created them again. Now, what bigger mission can a human being take on? What bigger project is there of importance in the world of human endeavor? You have created a world with your prayer and your learning when you're at this level of understanding. It doesn't mean you have to be a kabbalist sitting all night learning. It means you have to engage in the process with faith and purity of heart, sincerity and belief, faith in yourself, faith in God. Chazal, this is what our sages taught. You are my nation, God says, and says, no, don't call them my nation, call them Imi, with me in creation. The Jewish people were designed to carry the divine presence wherever they went. That's why we had this 40 years in the desert, carrying around the golden box, carrying that precious document, the ark, through the desert, because we were going to do it again on a global scale. And that's what we call the final exile. But shutafi, with partnership with God, just like I create the world with my speech, the heavens and the earth with my speech, af atem kain, so too the human beings, especially the Jewish people, when they're learning Torah and prayer, are creating worlds. Energy spheres that surround us, that protect us, that guide us, that guard us. And you say, well, a lot of people always ask me, what about the non-Jews? I said, if the non-Jews partake of the process through their belief in God and their belief in the mitzvot that they are commanded, and in their belief in the Jewish mission and joining to that mission, then they are part of that recreation of creation. Because certainly he creates the heavens and the earth with words of prayer and Torah. And he repeats the idea, he returns and he renews and fixes the worlds that have fallen. Natati shalom ba'aretz, and this is, I gave peace in the land. How did God give peace in the land? By giving us the tools to make peace. Ki me'ahartziut, from our materialistic ways. Nitalim nitzatzov t'nasim shalom. We again, we're lifting up the a lollipop right here, putting aside for my grandkid, right? This lollipop just has a lot of sugar in it and some flavor probably. But that sugar came from a plant that grew in the earth, that had desire to grow. And that desire to grow is what we're attaching to, because the desire to grow ultimately is not just a piece of sugar cane, it's the entire world wants to grow, including a 6-year-old that's going to eat the candy bar, or a 62-year-old going to get joy in life from watching his grandson get joy from a candy bar. Or a pop, what is this called? A lollipop, right? I don't know who lolly or pop is, but anyways. This is the essential repair of all creation, folks. We don't need the movies. We don't need Hollywood. We got it right here. We don't need science fiction. You might call it metaphysical science fiction, but it's not fiction. And it is Kabbalistic science. And therefore, the Rebbe says we need to speak only holy things because that makes our vessel the proper place for those words of Torah and prayer to go up. And this doesn't mean you don't say hi, good morning to people on the street, and you don't inquire how people are, and you can engage in a little bit of what we call schmoozing in Hebrew, a little small talk to warm up the motor, to make the connection felt between people. But it's always with this idea of, so where are we holding today in the learning? How is your prayer going? How is your Chag? How is your festival? How is Shabbat? You're always asking questions that are connected somehow to the big tree, to the big picture. And that's also holy speech. And not other things, because these other things, talking about money and endlessly talking about money and sports and entertainment and celebrity and all these things, they don't cut it. They don't pick up the sparks. You can say, why not? There's people doing them because there's no intentionality. No intentionality means no channel to connect to the upper world. Because if people decide they don't want to connect to God, they want to watch a movie. They want to watch a movie about people doing things that you probably don't want to do. And that means it's disconnected from the purpose. And the purpose is what creates the channels. And the channels is what create the connection. And the connection is what draws down the peace. And the peace is what creates the vessel for blessing. And the vessel for blessing, the vessel for blessing. You've heard of that, right? The vessel for blessing is what brings down the light that makes us all in awe of God. And the awe of God creates a new level for humanity. And that creates the messianic vision that we're all looking for, my friends. So we're going to stop this Torah right here because we can't stop in a better place. Maybe we're all blessed with being part of the process, see that we're part of the process, live it, feel it, and share it with others. And we're going to continue this tomorrow because it gets better. God bless you all. Have a great day, a great week. We'll see you again.